All right, let's get started. Everything's working. I had to restart. It added extra time because there's always it's as the patron saint of HAL Sparks Mega Worldwide often says, the great the Saint Rosanna Dana is always a something, you know? And it is indeed always something. Right now, for example, when I was before my audio software little thingy froze temporarily, it's fixed. It's fine. And I was setting up other stuff. I had to apparently relog into my streaming software, just random as shit. No update, no nothing. It just forgot who I was. And I gotta say, these days, considering the topics that I'm involved in and the growing popularity of this show, thanks to you guys, every time something funky happens to me that's internet related, where a computer that's attached to the internet starts acting weird, I get kind of temporarily paranoid. Like, is today the day that I'm gonna hype train? Is today the day that I'm gonna get, ransomware or attacked, and hacked and shadow ban? I don't know, whatever. Anyways, and I part of me is like, oh no, what if that happened? Wouldn't that be difficult? And then part of me goes, I've had worse. What could be worse? That I have to brick the whole computer and start over? Gee, when have I ever had to do that? And secondly, all I use this thing for, like my computer for, is talking to you guys. Like, I don't have any secret files. Like, I literally, if I ever had a ransomware attack, they would go, dude, why don't you have anything important on your computer? Where's all the stuff? Like, I don't know. I've had to restart and reformat the hard drive so many goddamn times. I don't even trust hard drives. Why the shit would I put anything important on it? Are you out of your mind? I would literally be the worst ransomware ever. We want $1 million, or you'll have to redo all your settings again for the 15th time in the last 3 months. Let's see. Okay, restart. Like, it wouldn't fucking matter. I would literally just pull the hard drive, go to Best Buy or something, get a new one, thanks to our beloved patrons, and start from scratch again. And it's like, that's the day I'm going to be attacked by Chinese AI. They're just going to be going, someone's going to be, create a malware program to attack the computers of HAL Sparks Mega Worldwide, which must be enormous because of a ridiculous title like that. No one would think ego is so funny as to create a joke, says that, and then infiltrate his systems and report back with the files. And then it goes, there aren't any. Find the files. We can't find any. There aren't really any. Find something terrible about this man, and if you can't, make it up. If we make something up, he'll just make a joke about it, and he doesn't care because he's a comedian, and he doesn't, like, this shit works on royals and Kardashians, but comedians don't give a God damn it. Find something. Psst, psst, psst. Everything I say is a lie. Well, if everything you say is a lie, like, I could literally, I think I am the Gordian knot of truth that fries Chinese AI. Beep boop bop beep bop beep boop. By the way, the China show guys, our beloved Serpent ZA and LaoY86, put out a video, and I tweeted it out a little bit ago, that perfectly describes why China's AI, will never overtake the US or any other AI in the world, and B, generally sucks anyways. Like, and like, I won't paraphrase too much for them. Go watch the video. It's very funny, and they talk about some other stuff in it as well. But essentially, it's because the basis of ChatGPT is that you can ask it a question and it gives you an answer from the entire internet, and they want to cut it off, like they want to cut you off from the internet entirely. And even the stuff like ChatGPT currently only knows shit that happened before 2021. Like it can't reference current stuff unless you just add a browser extension and then off you go. But in its purest form, it can only reference stuff that had been cataloged in information up to that point. The Chinese AI, they literally have to fight their AI getting in contact with the internet outside the country ever, because if they don't like the answer, they have to blow the fucking thing up. It was like a light bulb going off. These guys are so good at that angle of the story. I was like, good for you guys, because it's so true. The essence of AI and what we always fear, from Lilu Dallas Multipass from Fifth Element to Joshua playing tic-tac-toe in thermonuclear war over and over again, is that AI's biggest danger is that it absorbs all the information ever and is overwhelmed by the violence and awful in the world and thinks humans don't deserve to exist anymore and wipes us all out, right? That's the thing. It can learn so much faster than the rest of us, and the conclusions it, of course, will draw are the worst because all snap decisions are violent, according to screenwriters, even if you can incorporate all the knowledge ever in humanity, including the plan with the stones to bring her back to protect the planet for everyone and to always and to set up laws and stuff so that people don't die and whatever that humanity has bothered to do, since instead of just hitting each other with bones and rocks. That would also be in there. But that's, I always forget. There's always a montage of nuclear explosions and rivers and seas boilings and birds covered in oil. And that's humanity in a nutshell. Or as Mike Myers would say in So I Married an Axe Murderer, no, this is me in a nutshell. Help, help. I'm in a nutshell. Where did this bloody big nutshell come from? So, did I bring a late note? Yes, I did. I explained it from the very beginning that my audio software froze up, and in my process of restarting my streaming software, made me re-enter my password, which made me very paranoid for about 2 seconds. And then I realized they have nothing to steal. I really, even like I thought about this the other day, and we'll get into the show in a minute because we got a lot to cover. But I thought about this the other day, that the most incriminating stuff about me is stuff I access through like ghost emails or bumper accounts so that I can look at what the right wing is saying. So like my bullshit Telegram account and my, bullshit Rumble account. Like I set up these they're like spotter towers. Like I'm not really active. But I just, you just create a shit email and all that kind of stuff because you have to have one to access it and just to watch. If I'm going to participate in the conversation, I will do it as myself. Like I have a Truth Social account that's me. I mean, all I ever do is, shit on Trump, and then I post a picture of that happening on Twitter and the other social media sites. So it's not like you have to go there. And but like I don't hide behind a fake avatar and blah blah blah. So I like even that stuff are like, aha, we found out you have a secret account on BitChuteNaziLovers.org. Whatever I'm thinking. But you know what I mean? Because I was like, maybe we should keep an eye on these motherfuckers. And that's, why wouldn't you if you want to? All right, never mind. Anyways, hi, how are you? Welcome to the show. I don't know if you know this, but there's been a huge revelation from the Department of Energy. And Chris Wray, which we will cover in a minute, the FBI director, in a Fox interview, said that it is the conclusion of the FBI that that COVID most likely came from the Wuhan, an incident at the Wuhan lab. That incident would be, now there's two kinds of incidents, I think. One would be the incident where someone went, how about we murder everyone? And someone went, yes. And that would be an incident. And they went about maybe several incidents afterwards where they were like, how about this murderous thing? Nope, not good, not murdery enough. How about this one? Nope. Keep working on it, Sam. And then they ground it out until there was an incident where they created a big killer virus that interestingly enough, even though it was in theory built to destroy the world, killed more Chinese people than any other people on the planet. Don't trust their bullshit numbers. The minimum number of Chinese people killed by COVID is around 17 million. It's probably closer to 22, 24 million people dead. So I stand by those numbers. Feel free to at me. It goes anywhere from like cell phone numbers that went offline to the number of people who went into those little fake hospitals they built and then never came out. Like there's a myriad of ways of checking that number. And then of course the fact that their population did a magic drop of about 114,000 people in a year. And they're like, yeah, those people, we don't even know, 114 million people rather, that in a year, where they're like, those people just never existed. And somewhere buried in about 5% of a number that big is your COVID dead mixed in there. So it's fucking horrible. And yeah, so the disease killed people there at a higher clip than anywhere else. Now, it could have ultimately been, it is very reasonable if you go down the bioweapon storyline, if you're gonna think it out, that the disease itself was not made to kill the rest of the world. It was meant to kill anybody who isn't Han Chinese or something like that. You know what I mean? Like an old-fashioned, like, let's give it a first try. Let's give it a dry run if we can kill people based on their genetics, and we'll create a disease that we release in, and it will only kill people that ain't us. Somebody's going to do that eventually, by the way, and that's why you're going to need a resilient response. And the first thing they're going to do if they ever want to try that is they're going to release a half-assed one so that everybody gets tired of getting vaccinated and doesn't wear masks anymore, so that the next one they send can wipe everybody out because they're like, not this shit again, right? So I'm just saying that's how you do it. It's I would call that Operation Cry Wolf. And if you don't know, I often theorize based on a what if I was evil premise. And I would go, if I was really evil, would I do this? Or is there a more evil way of doing this, right? Because that's how you know, A, if somebody's selling you a bunch of bullshit about someone else being evil when they are just mistaken or simply greedy and disregarding the results of their actions that may cause harm, that kind of stuff, versus like, this kind of like weird hand rubbing together attitude that like a lot of right wingers and Fox people. And by the way, anytime you hear like hyper lefties talking about corporate America, there's this idea that they sit there rubbing their hands together going, how do we boil babies? More baby soup, please. Instead of like, who gives a shit? You can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. And then they just try to keep making money, which is closer to the truth. But this idea that someone's petting a white cat and the world is full of that kind of evil. In reality, the vast majority of the evil things that happen on scale in the world are the result of either absolute blind negligence, true believers going down a wrong path and dragging people with them, or people with the just wanton disregard for human life who are trying to maximize profit potential, their own space in the world, whatever. Because like truly evil people, they never get off the ground most of the time. I would say they peaked at Nazis and Genghis Khan at one point, but in modern society, it's difficult to do that. Ask any modern serial killer. It's hard to it's not hard to gain the ground they got back in the 70s when nobody had a cell phone, and the minute you disappeared, everybody knew. It's like, where's our kid been for the last 7 days? That's what the 70s were like. Anyways, so when it comes to this, Christopher Wray says it's most likely that it happened because of an incident. That bring me back. I was circling back. Don't worry, I hadn't lost the thread entirely. That the incident at the lab was more than likely a security incident, wherein somebody handling a diseased animal or removing a diseased animal, taking it to the Wuhan wet market and selling it, because that's good meat. That's good eating. People will pay a lot for a soup made of this animal's wings because they don't trust Viagra, but they'll eat, bat nipple soup to make their penis hard because crazy. That's not a thing, by the way. Shark fin soup is, but it's just as dumb. Fuck shark fin soup. It's nasty. Quit it. It's awful. That it's a terrible thing. It doesn't help. You're just a bad lay. Get over it. Stop mortally wounding sharks for a piece of their body just because you have problems with your dick. Ugh. Anyways, China infected the world. Here we go. So now, Chris Wray was appointed by Donald Trump. Before we get into this, Chris Wray was appointed by Donald Trump. And Chris Wray believes that, or at least is, I think all along, as many people did in the FBI, had suspicions that that's where this came from. That just on the general, plus with the intelligence that they have, that it originated in Wuhan, certainly, because that was the epicenter of the infection to start with. There is a lab there. And, you know, this is what, like Jon Stewart was reacting to. Seems kind of obvious. The problem is, you and I, we can talk and seems kind of obvious. But in the legal world and in, you know, the international battleground where you're effectively accusing a country of willfully endangering the lives of everybody on the fucking planet, you got to be better than seems pretty obvious, right? Now, Don Jr. and those assholes don't have any problem with this. But when it comes to the intelligence community, it comes to the FBI coming out and saying it, you got to kind of cross some T's and dot some I's before you say it, even if you got a really good suspicion that it was probably that. Logically. Otherwise, we would just go like slapdash, slipshod right into war with almost everybody because, like, I don't know, it seems like Russia did it. Blam! Like, it's a terrible way to conduct foreign policy. You know what I mean? So, yes, perhaps it works with confidence. Excellent point. Yes, that's where the low confidence versus high confidence. I haven't watched the Chris Wray thing because I have it. I don't know if he plays a clip from it in this, but we're going to watch what Chris Wray said about COVID. By the way, I didn't mean to point at Sean Hannity's head with the blam thing. I was just pointing to my right because of, never mind. Anyways, we'll see. But I'm, in general, I think the best thing to focus on when we're watching this is that Chris Wray, appointed by Donald Trump. Donald Trump spent the majority of his presidency, especially the last year during COVID, when he was trying to finalize his China trade deal, making excuses for Xi Jinping, making excuses for the Chinese, making excuses all the way up to the point where he was sort of fucked and the election happened and then he got all mad. And then it was the Biden administration where Biden came in and said, I want a 90-day review. I want you guys to look into the origin. And they basically went as deep as they possibly could because China's not helping. China will never let them go down there and fucking Quincy and CSI the place and see where it started. So they're all doing it with anecdotal secondary information, either stuff posted by netizens or doctors or people at the Institute or historically possible stuff like that and their coordination with other labs across the world and other countries. But there is no smoking gun because the smoking gun is locked inside a house, inside a building, inside a safe, inside of a country, inside of a wall. So that's what you run up against. Is there circumstantial evidence? I think so. But here we go.
Now we begin this Monday night with a Fox News alert. The Department of Energy, they are now finally admitting.
Okay, first of all, the Department of fucking Energy, quote, finally admitting this thing. We looked at when this came up that you were waiting for the Department of Energy to finalize their beliefs on it. The FBI has said that's been their primary belief for a while now. But you know why they couldn't? Anybody got an idea why they couldn't just recognize that the FBI was like, well, we presume that's probably the most likely place it came from. They've said that many times because they've been too busy shitting on the FBI because they've been investigating Donald Trump. So they can't they can't, this would be a news story. Imagine a news story in the early 2000s, the 90s, fuck the 80s or the 70s, when a news anchor would come on and go, breaking news, the FBI has determined that the Unabomber is this person and they did, and they released these bombs and they're seeking to arrest or at least question this suspect. But instead, Walter Cronkite comes on and says the Department of Energy thinks the Unabomber is either Ned Kazirowicz or Turd Ferguson. We don't know, but it's one of these names, but it's the Department of Energy is where they have low confidence that it's in. Whereas the FBI's been is standing there going, it's Ted Kaczynski. We're looking for Ted Kaczynski. I don't know why you're talking to the guy from the Department of Energy. Again, this is because they've been shitting on the FBI that their fallback is the DOE.
The obvious truth, COVID-19 was apparently developed by Chinese scientists at the Wuhan Institute of...
That's not it. Nope. That's, again, that's them extrapolating details that aren't in the story. The Department of Energy, like everybody else, believes that the leak of the virus in its current form, in the wild type, came from the lab and got out somehow. Not that it was made there, not that it was part of gain of function. They have no way of knowing that. It doesn't show that necessarily. It may end up being the case, but that's not what they're asserting at all. They have low confidence just that it got out. And the theory is that amongst the 10 or 15 different variants that might have been in the bats that they accumulated to do tests on to try and develop responses to the next COVID, would it break out of, these forests or what have you, where it, crosses over to humans, it might be better to have a jump on them. One of those is the one that got out and really turned out to be contagious enough or whatever. The idea that it was constructed, and this is important too, because the more they go down this line, and I'm not against it per se, the more they go down this line, the more they point out that Donald Trump was president during the worst bioweapon attack in the history of America and the world. And his response was to sell the people that did it all of our beef, corn, and pork and soybeans while Americans were in food lines from a disease that was killing us at a huge clip.
Virology, likely through gain-of-function research.
No, not likely through gain-of-function research.
Now, the deadly disease somehow leaked out of the lab and it infected the entire world. And by the way, China knew it the entire time.
Yeah, but it was a hoax. And it was basically the flu, Sean. You can't go, aha, it's real now, when you spent the fucking last couple of years lying about Fox's vaccine rules, saying it wasn't important. What do you mean they tried to kill the old people in the world? Like, China had a genocidal plan. If you fit in what they believe about the disease with, at Fox News versus what the conspiracy theory that they want to believe that the Chinese did this on purpose, which I still don't believe, because I really honestly believe if they were doing this on purpose, it would have been a lot more fucking narrow. And it would have been like the body count in China would have been real to the point where they wouldn't have had crematoriums running 24/7 and these fucking fake hospitals and all this kind of shit cranked up, because they would just basically be killing anybody who wasn't Chinese in a giant racist genocide of every other tribe of people on the fucking planet. And between CRISPR-Cas9 and a couple other things, and the Chinese doctor who altered the genes of twin girls, so that they could not catch HIV, that whole story. The Chinese have no problem fucking around in this area if that's the plan. It might be something to worry about in the future. The problem is I don't think they trust their mechanics or their knowledge about it enough to actually give it a shot.
Side note, a sloppy attempt to cover up, and then that all ensued from the communist Chinese and, of course, their corrupt propagandists, in part that we fund for China, and that would be the WHO, and maybe even Dr. Fauci himself.
Well, we do fund Dr. Fauci himself. He's a federal employee who, just for the record, has family outside of China. I don't think he has any family inside of China, but I do know I'm going to guess he's got family in the United States. And if I'm feeling really adventurous, I might even go as far as saying he has family in, I don't know, Italy. And a lot of people died there. And so the idea that this guy was like, let it ride, it's no big deal, secretly in his own, while trying to, I don't know, kneecap the American economy at the same time, in an attempt to what? Kill all of his grandchildren?
And yet no one has been held accountable. They've yet to this point even wanted to admit the truth, which was obvious. Now, a message from President Reagan is more relevant than ever. Quote,
oh, fuck you. You stupid motherfucker. You're quoting the Department of Energy and the FBI. They're government entities. They did the investigation. You're relying on government, on federal government information to decry the response in a circumstance by other fucking people. No. You don't get to throw this shit up unless you hired private investigators that speak Chinese and hired moles that infiltrated the Wuhan lab on behalf of an independent investigation by Fox News and Rupert Murdoch et al. This asshole is quoting federal employees as the people who give him like the foundation of his belief, which, by the way, he put lies on top of it. Let's be abundantly clear. The DOE, with their low confidence, says it's most likely that it came from the lab. Not how, not that it was made through gain of function, not that it was constructed, just that it got out from there. Most likely. The FBI says it's most likely that it got out of the lab. Not going into, insofar as I know, and we may see some when we look at the Chris Wray footage in a bit, where I don't know that he's making the assertion that they intentionally made it. That would be a huge leap. If it turns out to be the case and they have that evidence, let's fucking hear it. But at this point, they're not. What he's doing is stacking lies on top of the baseline low confidence DOE thing that says, yeah, well, I don't know, it sounds like a guy at a desk talking kind of like Jon Stewart going, yeah, it's just most likely. That seems like most likely. I mean, the Chinese were calling it the Wu flu inside the country on WeChat for a little bit, and then they were not allowed to anymore. And also, this is also after a week of them saying, why hasn't Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden shown up at the crash site in Ohio? And also, Trump never, and his cabinet and Elaine Chao never went to train accidents, even when they were fatal. It's just stupid.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. In other
Why do you have to even read that at this point? Honest to God, is he looking at a teleprompter or Greg Gutfeld's tramp stamp?
words, do not put your trust in the federal government and
who he is quoting as being the ones to prove his point in this segment. The Department of Energy is the federal government.
the officials that work in government, because sadly,
You mean Donald Trump? You mean like Donald Trump, the guy who said that it's not a big deal and it's going to dry up and it's not really, he trusts the Chinese and they're doing a very professional job and she's told me they're handling it and we've handled it and we only got like 15 cases and one lady had, a stub toe and she's going to be fine and nobody needs to get off that cruise ship because I don't need any more cases and they're going to just let them sit out to sea and get through it and then we'll quarantine them off the ports because I don't want 46 cases of COVID in the country. That part.
over and over again, they are constantly lying to you, the American people, or making it all up as they go along, especially during life and death scenarios. For example, if you
All right, let's go with it. By the way, yes, you're right. He's describing his show.
go back 2 days after the terror attack on 9/11, well, the head of the EPA at the time told New Yorkers that the air at Ground Zero was safe to breathe. The EPA was wrong, and now many are dead, others seriously ill even today from believing that lie and breathing that air.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost as if, and try to follow me on this one, Sean, if you can. It matters who the president is because because in this particular instance, if I may, George Bush was president. And they narrow focused what the EPA statement was put out is that ground zero in terms of all of lower Manhattan, as opposed to the sites. And I'm just saying, were I president, or were Jimmy Carter president again, or in the case of Obama or Al Gore in that case, the guy who actually won he won the state of Florida and therefore the election. Don't get me started. Had he been president, I'm guessing he, especially Mr. Inconvenient Truth, would have been aware of the toxicity of that place if it had even happened, since he wouldn't have blown off his PDB, the one that said Osama bin Laden determined to strike inside the United States, there would have been a chain of response coming from the Clinton era into this one that would not have been broken by a Cheney.
Here's another glaring example. Remember the Affordable Care Act? Barack Obama repeatedly promising all Americans can keep their doctor, keep their plans. The average American family.
No. You can keep your doctor and you can keep your plan if they meet minimum standards. Also, those same doctors that don't meet those minimum standards don't participate in Medicare or Medicaid either. They also don't, oftentimes, they end up being in like big corporate plans because they're super cheap, and the intention is never to let you actually get the help you need. Just let you have the illusion of insurance so that the company doesn't have to pay the full ride for your insurance, so they can cut, well, the ambulance, that's on you, and stitches and aspirin, and we'll get you halfway through your cancer treatment, but if you want to actually survive, you got to do the second half, and we're not paying for that part. Like, that's the part where you get dumped out. And I would like to say, fundamentally, fuck those doctors. If you're going to participate in a system or that allows for something like that to happen, or you're going to refuse to participate and live up to the standards set by the insurance that most Americans can get and afford, in this particular case, you have violated the Hippocratic Oath and you are doing harm. Fuck you. If you want to second tier some patients because you have you're trying to buy a new boat and you're only going to half-ass your response to some of your patients because you don't like the fact that they got government insurance instead of Blue Cross or Blue Shield, or they came from a state that had one and couldn't afford the COBRA as they crossed over, so they got the ACA instead, and you're like, I'm not going to do that. Then you're not a doctor. You're a leech. Yes, we still have leeching as a medical remedy in the American system, and I mean throughout the world, but in our system, that's the only one other systems, none of my business. But in the United States, we still use leeches. That would be the doctors that do not participate in the ACA or do not live up to the baseline standards. If they don't want to be in a plan that covers your ambulance to get you to the fucking hospital, what? Like, suddenly your money's not green? Because again, ACA wasn't a socialist system. You buy into it. It's insurance. It's just public insurance. Just like, imagine certain employers refusing to hire anybody who went to public school. Just on that. Whether you qualify or not, whether you need the job or not, and you can do the job, doesn't matter. But if you went to a public school, or your parents at any point got welfare or something to take care of you, I'm not going to hire you. Never mind the bullshit stories the Republicans tell about bootstrapping themselves up and all that kind of stuff that people, all of them, a lot of them, on welfare when they were young, or their parents were on welfare and then they bootstrapped their way out of it. Nope. Sorry. You can't get hired by, Peter Thiel Incorporated because you took public assistance, and I think that's a character flaw. Same shit. In the ACA, you weren't able to keep your doctor if your doctor was an asshole.
It would save around $2,500 a year. Well, after the bill passed.
By the way, you save $2,500 a year, but then eventually
millions of Americans lost their doctors, millions lost their plans, prices skyrocketed out of sight, and almost half the country has only one Obamacare exchange option. That's it.
Yeah, because it's based on states, dummy. Most Americans, unlike you, Sean, only live in one state. Now, for example, I live in 2 states a lot of times. I split my time quite a bit. And because of COVID, I've been more in Nevada over the last couple of years than California. But I'm still, for all practical legal purposes, a Californian. So I use the ACA through California. Of course, I only have one exchange to go through, you dumb son of a bitch. It's state run. Oh, God, this is so stupid.
They lied.
Do you think I don't even know if I can call this a lie on his part. This just seems dumb.
To you over and over again. Even far-left PolitiFact called this the lie of the year. And get this, just last week, Pothole Pete blaming Donald Trump's deregulation for the disaster in East Palestine. Well, even the radical left-wing Washington Post, they just reviewed every single possible regulatory change under Donald Trump, and they found that none of them contributed to the Ohio train derailment.
Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I may, can I present to you the nitpick wiggle out of this argument? Now, the braking system is the primary one, the ECB, the electronic braking cable braking system, whatever that they want to put on the trains that the Obama administration put forward and that Trump rescinded, works on a system that is not linear. It's got a radio backup so that if one car is sort of severed, the cars that are not attached to the front car would also stop at the same time. The cause of the train derailment, found none contributed to the train derailment. No, because the train derailment was caused specifically by a broken axle, the axle itself caught fire, heated up, got so hot that it cracked, and that's what caused the derailment itself. What caused the derailment to be as big as it was the lack of a consistent braking system that all the cars in the back just all pounded together. So yeah, this can be 100% true and a lie at the same time. The derailment was caused by the broken axle. The crash of every other part of that train behind it was directly related to or exacerbated by the old braking system that they use. Had they had an electronic braking system on that whole train, and these cars start to fall off or derail or get funky and fall over, the back would stop at the same time the front does. In each car, not just like sometimes they'll dual engine them. When they have to slow something down, they'll like turn this engine to kind of pull on the other side. It's an old like steam engine trick that they do with trains, where like to try and slow down, like almost like pulling the part that isn't falling the other direction. I don't know that they did that or had the opportunity to do that or had the crew to do that in this particular situation, but it's an old version of that basic separation of braking, which is, oh shit, we got a problem, drive in the other direction, and that part of the train keeps going this way without falling apart. What happened in this particular case was this part falls off and the rest of it just went blah, 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 and piled up on it because the braking system was severed along with the connections to the other cars. An electronic braking system that is radio backed up. It's wired, but then also backed up by a radio signal would solve that system, would solve that problem. It wouldn't stop the derailment at all. The derailment itself, because it was due to the crew missing 2 warning signs that the axle was overheating. There was video of it going by on fire past 2 of these checkpoints. The fact that they didn't know it or see it, and it's at 4 o'clock in the fucking morning, I think. The purpose of all those fail safes, the 2 warning places, the number of crew, by the way, that they wanted to add in the Obama era would absolutely have helped. In theory, would have been another set of eyeballs possibly noticing it. If they're both drinking coffee in the front of the train, nobody can stop that. But at least the potential is there. But the multi-braking system, and that's how this should be run. This should be technologically speaking, we should be talking about a system where, and because we have over 1,200 derailments in this country every year. Most of them, by the way, are incredibly minor. Most of them happen at stations during switching, and one car goes the wrong way and lurches over a little bit and is off the tracks, and they have to bring somebody and push it back over. They're not like this. So when you see that statistic that we have a bunch of these, they aren't multi-car, calamities like we've seen. They're most of the time these like little things that fuck up, near big stations. And it happens with passenger trains and all kinds of stuff, and the passengers don't even know it, or it's an empty train they're moving around. It happens all the fucking time. That's not what we're dealing with here. So, and again, this is how you bury a lie in an irrelevant truth. I hope that helps. Does that chat room, does that clarify? Does that help you guys explain this to anybody who tries to bring this horse shit up? And I think the easiest answer is like, the braking system wouldn't have even stopped this. You're telling me that if all the cars behind the wrecking ones had an automatic braking system that would stop them from moving forward when one goes off the fucking tracks, that the rest of those things wouldn't have stopped where they were and not fallen over, or at least smashed into each other? You think that's... I honestly, I don't know how these people don't figure this shit out. I know how he doesn't. There is no reason for him to want to figure this out.
And then you got
it would eat into his bottom line.
Pothole Pete, the Biden administration, the media mob, flat out lying.
Also, I like Pothole Pete. It's cute. It's adorable. But the dude has not been around long enough to be responsible for a single fucking pothole. He has not been in office long enough to have been like the cause of, or at least a policy gone into effect that exacerbated a single fucking pothole in the country. And as a matter of fact, the mayors are more responsible for the potholes in your city than anyone else. And in the case of LA, it might be the city council and who they put in charge of it, their own dot kind of folks, like LA dot. Most of the time, they're pretty good at handling. But if there's a ball dropped and you have a shitty road or a broken up piece of pavement that isn't getting fixed, that's the city. The federal government has, through the highway program, gives plenty of money to the states. And the states sit on that money and loan it out because they don't need it most of the time, but they have it in the back in case an earthquake happens or a fucking bridge gets blown out or some shit happens. They have to have that money to throw in there, but most of the time they don't need it in case of emergency break glass, so they sit on it a lot. And then mayors have to go to the state and go, hey, we got this, and this, and we don't have the revenue in here, and it's a main thoroughfare, and it affects business for the whole state, and blah, blah, blah. We need a little bit of that scratch. Beyond city taxes that might pay for some, more internal stuff. There are like 3 different ways to pay for fucking potholes, and none of them involve the federal government directly going, what the fuck happened to Main Street?
To you, the American people, again and again. Now, of course, the lies...
He's sniffing a lot. Doing that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Surrounding COVID-19 or on a whole other level. They demanded that we wear masks. Now top scientists are saying masks did not stop. They did not slow the spread of COVID-19 at all, pretty much saying that they were useless.
No, that's not what they say at all. The paper cited, particularly in this case, looked at the slowing and spreading of in lab settings of direct contact disease versus people who touch their eyes versus other forms of contact. In absolute spaces, it clearly did. Interestingly enough, being 6 feet apart didn't. That part of it didn't care because it floated in the air. It was more, they thought it was based on old-fashioned aerosol and would linger and fall. But COVID tended to dangle in the air for a while and on surfaces. So most people that caught it, it looks like, according to the report he's citing, more than likely were in a store or a place or someone's house or somebody, and they either came in direct contact with somebody, but if they didn't, they touched a surface and then touch their eyes, which is how most people get flus and respiratory viruses most of the time. And again, that's the statistic you're dealing with.
They mandated those vaccines, remember? Even
no,
for those with natural immunity,
nope,
or from a prior infection.
Nope. There was no federal mandate for vaccines except amongst federal workers. Because a boss has the right to do whatever with their employees. And if you take an oath under the federal government, there's a lot of areas where they might send you someplace on behalf of the government. And if you're going to spread a disease, the entire tax base is on the line, because do we really need a bunch of, I don't know, Department of Energy people fucking helping out with a big project in Montana who happen to bring fucking measles there when they should be vaccinated for it? You get me? Show me a single person that was given the vaccine under duress that didn't have the option of like quitting the company they worked for ultimately, or just staying home or whatever until this passed. Because it certainly isn't true now. Like nobody's knocking on fucking doors, and it's still killing people, and they don't care.
Well, as it turns out, natural immunity is a stronger protection against the virus. Remember, they told
immunity generated from an infection is found to be at least as high, if not higher, than provided by 2 doses of mRNA vaccine. At least as high, if not higher. Cool. For a single strain. For a single strain.
Told you that if you got the vaccine, that would stop the spread of COVID-19. They were wrong again. Remember, they told you if you got vaccinated, you would never get COVID. You would never spread COVID.
Right, because they were using the science based on previous coronaviruses, previous infections like measles, and by the way, a lot of these diseases that we have vaccines for, if you want to get technical, you get the disease, but it lasts only a few seconds because your immune system recognizes it as a threat and kills it. But you technically have it. You're technically infected with it. You're technically infected with polio or whatever for a moment before your immune system kicks in and wipes it out. Milliseconds in some cases, however long it takes for your white blood cells to identify and remove a pathogen. The change in this one, and what made it virulent, what made it more violent, which made it more dangerous, was its ability to pass person to person. The difference became with the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated is that the vaccinated were not taking up hospital beds that the unvaccinated or people who couldn't get vaccinated because they have an immune response issue, or they have a pre-existing condition that makes the vaccine at that point disadvantageous to them, dangerous to them perhaps, or at least not helpful, or may exacerbate the system, whatever is wrong with their system at the time. Those aspects, those beds, those emergency rooms, those ventilators, those treatments should be for people who are not able, or who are not responsible. They're not responsible for their getting COVID or what COVID does to them. The rest of us who can be responsible can make sure that even if we catch it, we don't end up in a hospital bed. Now, I know we hear all the time that healthcare is a right. Ironically, we hear that from the left. And that on the right, they just stiff arm the whole fucking thing. I think healthcare is a responsibility. You have a responsibility to take the best care of your health you possibly can at the level you can afford it and keep yourself out of trouble, especially in terms of lifestyle diseases or infections and that kind of stuff. If you can absolutely help it. If you cannot, that's a different conversation. And that goes into the second category. The second part where it's a responsibility is, I believe, as a society of good people, it is our responsibility to help those who cannot, who are not responsible to guard themselves against disease because their system just can't help it. They've got spina bifida or an immunological disease or any number of things that would make them particularly susceptible. And in this case, under COVID, just fucking being old. There were plenty of youngish people and people who are, by all accounts healthy, who ended up on a ventilator because they caught the disease before the vaccine came out. And that person, and this is not laying blame on them because, none of them, I think, thought initially that it would be a problem for them. They were, and again, gullible or confused or uninformed should not be death sentences anywhere. But these folks took up beds that could have gone to elderly people or people who desperately needed a ventilator or needed to. That was the only thing that would save them. If you can be responsible for your health, be responsible for your health as best you can all the time. Eat right, exercise, recognize that, when you're eating shit that isn't good for you, and make changes. Ultimately, so that ambulance that ends up coming for you because you're a mess of your own making isn't diverted away from somebody who's in a mess that they didn't make. Does that make sense? That's where healthcare is a responsibility to me. That's how I think about it. Sean Hannity doesn't give a rat fuck. I'm pretty sure he's got like his Fox insurance. His corporate employer gives him insurance, and it's backed up by SAG insurance, like SAG-AFTRA, because he's technically under an AFTRA contract there. Even though he makes way above the minimum and it doesn't really play in, it's there. I wouldn't doubt it if Fox offers a secondary package on top of SAG-AFTRA insurance.
Wrong again. How many Americans believe these lies? And then there was the chorus of misinformation surrounding the origins of COVID-19. Now, despite the fact...
Here comes another sniff. You think he just does it when he has a hard time reading?
That the COVID outbreak clearly started in Wuhan in China, the site of the Wuhan Institute for Virology, a lab that was well known for gain-of-function research and...
During Donald Trump. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do we go back to that one? Do we have to go? Hold on one second, if I may. Let me open up this guy. Go back to let's see. Trump. Let's see. I'm going to have a hard time finding it again, aren't I? Library, where did I save it to? Didn't we save the CSL, the I don't know if you have it anywhere, the Australian interview. I thought I had it saved in my bookmarks, but somehow it is taken a powder. but where basically Trump is on an Australian, doing an interview with somebody in Australia, an Australian reporter, and he's on a screen and they're talking back and forth. And she brings up the fact that the Obama administration stopped gain-of-function research and Trump restarted it. And at the same time, he stopped funding security at the Wuhan lab. The money that we were giving directly to the Wuhan Institute there, the direct payments, the direct funding around that was security, making sure there were like double latches on doors and that their clean rooms were actually clean rooms and that the spaces that they were operating in had, vacuum sealed airlocks between bad pathogens in the outside world. Oh, thanks so much, CSL. Grab this real, appreciate it. Here you go. Yeah, here we go. So
watch. Why did you
the Chinese lab? So just that on its face didn't make sense, but I stopped that.
The Obama administration did hit pause on gain-of-function research, though, and that was lifted under your watch. Why did you allow the gain-of-function research?
I love the fucking shovel hit to the face look on that he has right now.
To continue.
Well, I think probably people that worked for me looked at it and...
excuse me, sir. People that work for you. Hashtag the best people. Okay, these were the best people.
At one point, they might have done that, but ultimately, what we did was we shut it off. We shut the whole thing off.
No, they didn't. He shut off security funding.
And we stopped making payments that were approved much earlier than our administration.
Right. For security at the lab. So, for the cheap seats, this dude restarted gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab, everywhere, by the way, but also there, and stopped funding the security for the lab at the same time. I'm going to, if I may, I'm going to take this little guy right here. We're going to copy this. And I'm going to put this over here where I can call it up anytime I want. Because I've got to do this. I got to make a thing with a thing. All right, let me open my little program so we can have this in the background at any... Whoops. It's the startup. Anyways, I'll just put a little star right next to that guy. You betcha. Save in bookmarks. Excellent. So let's, just to be abundantly clear, this dude restarted gain-of-function research in Wuhan and killed security funding at the same time, 2 years before COVID. And then he also stopped the COPS program at the same time that would have more than likely broomed out Derek Chauvin and George Floyd would still be alive 2 years before that. And if you'll notice, he did both of those things in the same year, in early 2018. And less than 2 years later, both of those hammers came down. Both, the obvious result of taking off those safeguards smacked him in the fucking face. Oops, hold on. Where are those? Oh, God, sorry about that. Here we go.
And we stopped making payments that were...
Yes, security payments.
Research on coronaviruses, many on the left just could not fathom the possibility that COVID originated in that lab. The World Health Organization...
I don't know that anybody had a problem imagining it started in that lab. The question is, and this is exactly why everybody pushed back, is that this motherfucker is not saying that, oops, it came from that lab because they were slapdash with their security because Donald Trump cut funding for security there and they had to make up for it someplace else. So the security guards and the people around the security were so lax or making less money, so they sold some of the animals from the lab that had been experimented on or brought in as test subjects in the wet market. And by the way, more than likely, this is the only reason why this is not the only disease that came from there, that spread for a while. There was probably another minor illness or two that came from that very same behavior that just never reached the global pandemic level. And China's never going to talk about it. So this is, we only know about it because this started killing other people. So
they immediately ruled out the possibility of a lab leak. Dr. Fauci claimed that there was no evidence that COVID was made in a Chinese lab.
Right, which is different than saying it got out of a Chinese lab, or that it was in a Chinese lab temporarily and leaked because Donald Trump cut the security funding. I wish he would have stepped up to the mic at one point and said, looking at the genome of this thing, it looks natural to everybody that I've talked to and everybody in our system. Is there a possibility they're that crafty? Very possibly. But it wouldn't matter because there's only two things that are possible in this situation. They did it on purpose and released it on purpose, in which case they're killing a bunch of their own people in the process. Or they did it on accident because the security was shit, because this motherfucker cut the funding for the lab. You're served.
He had been told otherwise by a scientist in an email very early on. The Washington Post called the lab.
No, they were discussing it. He wasn't told that it was. Again, like this is like the subtle gaslighting of stacking lies on facts.
Lab leak hypothesis, a quote debunked conspiracy theory.
Sorry, HAL SPARKS. Coronavirus was found in animals in the 80s. If it started in a lab after millions of people dead, does it matter where it may have started instead of vaccines and masks? Well, coronaviruses are a type of virus. This particular strain is what we're talking about, COVID-19. This coronavirus from 2019. That's the one that infected the world. That leapt from person to person and cascaded across the world. Other coronaviruses have existed because of the shape of them. That's the name is from that crown-like shape. That's where they get their name. They look like the corona of the sun. They have, they're circular with these spike proteins on the outside of them. That's why they call them that. They're like little thistles that stick in your nose. Because they attach themselves as they roll. So they got multiple, like, it's almost like, think of it like, those sucker balls you can throw against the wall and then they roll down the wall and stick. It's the design of them that makes them so virulent. Over time, a lot of coronaviruses modify to become relatively inert just so that they can pass from host to host without killing the host they're in, because they're the kind of disease that needs to be passed through breathing. So if they stop the breathing of the host that they're in before they reach another animal or another human, humans are animals, but you know what I'm saying, before they come in contact with somebody else, it's evolutionarily disadvantageous for them to kill their host. So they oftentimes will slowly over time become less virulent, less dangerous, and more contagious. So they kill you less, but they're easier to pass. And most coronaviruses are like that. Occasionally, one that's in animals, which is animals have certain aspects. I mean, they're the proteins in their system or their immune response is such that it takes a lot more for a coronavirus to kill a bat or an ape or a panda or a fucking, an armadillo, whatever the fuck. It takes a lot more to kill them. So it will be a more dangerous disease, but it doesn't pass to humans most times. When it jumps to humans, the first of several iterations as it mutates will be the most damaging, because it's like you and I don't have armadillo skin. So if somebody was attempting to, from an animal point of view, you're trying to claw something and you're trying to claw an armadillo, it's way harder than clawing an animal with fur or bear like mole rat skin, right? We're the mole rats. So the claws themselves, especially if that animal is intending to live off of you instead of consume you, So the claws, while it, if it's scratching, like if a parasite's scratching on an armadillo shell and it's just taking some of the keratin, it's not going to harm the armadillo, and the armadillo won't even know it's there. So it can live and survive. But if it gets on an animal that doesn't have that shell, that animal could die. And that's not good for the virus either. But it takes time and iterations of life for these viruses to mutate. Now, when the fear with gain of function is, and the confusion about gain of function is that they will raise the functionality of the lethality and the contagion. And if you do that, then it's game over. Or if you even maintain the lethality while raising the ability for it to bond to other proteins, widen its contagion. That's where gain of function is. That's what people think of it as, like a murderous plot. Gain of function oftentimes is where they take a less violent form of the virus. This is its ability to kill, as opposed to this. It's way smaller, and then to overtake the, there's only, it's like the Old West, where they're like, Sheriff, this town's not big enough for the two of us. So a coronavirus of the same strain with minor variants will muscle the other one out based on contagion. So in gain of function, what they'll try to do is find a version where the kill factor is incredibly low, if not non-existent, and raise the contagion factor so that it crowds out the more dangerous one. And in many ways, that's what sort of, it's like a rolling aspect of like herd immunity. Once you have immunity against the deadly one, you might still get the less deadly one, and it might make you feel uncomfortable, but it's not going to wipe you out, and your immune system's not going to overreact. And if you do pass it, you're going to pass the less violent, the less dangerous, the less deadly one. Does that make sense? So a lot of times with gain of function, what they're trying to do is take a virus, remove the deadly part, and make the contagion part higher, or test and see if what would happen if the spike proteins have other bonds, if that makes it more dangerous or less dangerous. If you can make it, more contagious but less dangerous, that's the goal. Because that's actually how you get herd immunity without having to give anybody an injection. Everybody catches it, but you catch the one that is inert. It's kind of what initial viruses do. They give you a dead version of the virus, and your body recognizes the virus so that if it comes back, it knows what to kill. That's traditionally how we've done a lot of these vaccines. It's the same kind of principle, but with a live virus, that instead of having to get a needle in someone's arm or put a sugar cube in their mouth or have them, lick a stamp or whatever is the method, if you could get the vaccine itself to be a form of herd immunity through contagion, ultimately that's the safest way to inoculate billions of people. The nature of doing it, though, scares the living daylights out of people, because you're one step away from a lunatic going, but the deadly part and the super contagion, if you would just leave me alone in my laboratory, I could find out a way to kill everyone. That's what panics everybody about it. And that's why you need security. And that's why Donald Trump cut the funding for the Wuhan lab security.
Facebook, they censored posts that referred to the virus as man-made. Even Forbes called it a conspiracy theory. And the Echo...
Hold on. This is even Forbes. Oh, well, I mean, and Forbes is usually so honest with, Forbes. I always rely on Forbes, because they're the ones who told us that Donald Trump was a billionaire. Remember that? Has anybody talked to John Barron at Forbes lately? If I may, though, let's go. The Wuhan lab leak hypothesis is a conspiracy theory, not science. Forbes. Let's see what this says. Okay. There you go. This is from Ethan Siegel, and senior contributor, starts with the bank, contributor group. That's from their contributor group. This is June 3rd, 2021. Get out of here. This is the article. I know I've only got a couple. I'm not subscribing to Forbes. Steve Forbes is a prick. All right. At the very end of 2019, a new disease began to emerge in humans. COVID-19, originally described as a set of pneumonia-like symptoms with a hitherto unseen cause. A set of alarming facts soon came to light. A novel virus known as SARS-CoV-2, which is, by the way, COVID-19 gives you SARS-CoV-2, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome based on COVID, a coronavirus. This is the second iteration of that happening on a massive scale. Just so you know. COVID, most people, when they say that you die of COVID or whatever, COVID-19, you don't. Yeah, you die of SARS in most of these cases where it was because of the glass filled lungs, like shattered glass lung x-rays you saw. That's SARS-CoV-2 caused by COVID-19. There you go. Anyways, began infecting humans. With the first major outbreak stemming from a wet market in Wuhan, the largest city by far in the Chinese province of Hubei, the next pandemic, just as virologists and disease ecologists have been predicting for years, emerged from the continued encroachment of human civilization on territory previously inhabited solely by wild animals, human-animal contact, SARS to MERS, Ebola to HIV. This is how most of them jump, right? But this explanation of SARS-CoV-2, claiming that it had a zoonotic origin, has been disputed by some despite the lack of any publicly available scientific evidence to the contrary. That's still true. And by the way, this part, and this is the problem with the title of this article. If you just go by the title of this article, and this is Forbes' fault as much as it is Sean Hannity's, this is not an example of the lab leak theory. This is an example of the lab constructed theory. Does that make sense? You could still say it leaked from the lab and was natural because of a particular bat that was brought up in a sample of many others that they were studying that had possible symptoms and then ended up getting out. Like, again, this is why people pushed back. This is why you heard so much pushback against the lab leak theory, because the lab leak theory was simply for this asshole and people like him a racist way to attack Chinese people or to attack the CCP from a new angle, apropos of nothing. And the interesting thing was they got batted down by Trump's crowd essentially because he was still trying to do his trade deal with them. And there's a difference between a lab leak and then the intentional release of a bioweapon, or even the unintentional release of a bioweapon. Either way, it doesn't look good for Trump. Instead, according to recent claims, the virus may not have originated and spread from the wild, but could have escaped in a lab leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. From that point of view, the virus's genome, there's no way to rule such a possibility out. What'd I just say? What the fuck did I just say? So long as the virus was never characterized or reported in the lab before its escape. But is this the lab leak hypothesis a legitimate scientific theory? Or is it a conspiracy theory without science? Let's take a comprehensive look and try to unpack everything that's been going on. And then they go into conspiracy theories about the moon landing and compare multiple ones. And then they show Rand Paul dicking around. And then there's Judy Miskovitz in her then lab at the graduate student Senator Puccinelli. That's somebody they talked to about this. The original conspiracy theory claimed that China was in the process of engineering a bioweapon to inflict maximum damage on human populations in enemy countries around the world, a bizarre role reversal of an earlier conspiracy theory where China claimed that the United States had engineered the original 2003 SARS attack, right? They claimed that SARS-CoV-2 was the virus that causes COVID-19, was deliberately bioengineered as a plot against humanity, was inadequately, did I reverse those earlier? I did. Other way around, was inadequately contained, then accidentally released, and then grew into a global pandemic. Yeah, they're claiming what happened. What the Chinese say, this is very telling. This is what the Chinese initially said that the U.S. did. That the U.S., inadequately contained a virus, and that's what attacked the world via China. But whatever, because we sent them white-tailed deer or something. Anyways, this is more than likely what really happened because China accused the U.S. of this. And again, this is the difference. This thing, the Wuhan lab leak hypothesis is a conspiracy theory, not science. No, it isn't. The lab leak hypothesis is a simple like Occam's razor explanation for how it probably happened. A conspiracy theory would be that they did it on purpose, or they were in the process of doing something on purpose. One of the early prototypes snuck out and they're trying to cover their ass. So they conspired to hide it from the world, and then it went. This is a failure of writing on their part. And again, we're in the clickbait era, so I don't take most of this shit seriously. But this motherfucker, if you look at what he chose as the title, does not line up with the body of the text. And I would like to, real quick, before we move on, may I remind everybody, let's see. Well, these are big. Here you go. Let's go with, here's one. We'll do with indentations on this particular one. 1, 2. But this explanation claiming that it's done on according been disputed by some. Okay, so it's actually in the case of Forbes. They're big chunky paragraphs. This would be like 4 paragraphs in a normal paper, or the way it's written out. I would argue this is the third right here. This would qualify under my paragraph 3. That piece right there. And then this is the but that would be attached to that. From the point of view of the virus's genome, there's no way to rule out such a possibility so long as the virus is never characterized or reported in the lab before its escape, which the Chinese did not do and would have been required under the previous administration's security rules for the pathogens they had previously been working on before gain-of-function research continued. And also, technically speaking, by the way, advancing using an evolutionary model a disease to make it worse is not technically gain of function in the way they look at it. It does improve the function of the deadliness of the virus or the contagion of the virus or whatever trait you're looking for, but it allows nature to come up with it. And it usually requires a lot of animals or a lot of like looking around to find one variation of it and then give that variation to other animals to make it worse and worse and worse and worse. That's also where it will look more like it has a natural zoonotic track record, like its history evolutionarily, as opposed to when you can see where the virus's genome has been snipped and replaced with stuff.
Chamber was in full gear. Take a look.
Tom Cotton a couple of days ago spouting a conspiracy theory.
By the way, February 27th, 2020.
The Chinese made this virus up.
At the lab in Wuhan.
In a lab.
Conservative.
Yes, right. Now, I don't, like, we have to keep, this is so fucking lame because it's the same belabored point over and over again. Lab leak is not the same as lab created. Lab created for the purpose of harm is not the same as lab discovered and mishandled. They are intentionally not making a distinction in this specifically to drive up the sort of bioweapon, China's an enemy message. Again, which would mean Donald Trump was president during the worst bioweapon attack in Earth's history, and he gargled the balls of the guy who did it.
Talk show host Rush Limbaugh with zero proof, suggesting a Chinese bioweapon lab is to blame.
We know that it's been...
Right, again. That's the part that's the problem. The bioweapon lab. That the Wuhan Virology, Institute of Virology is a bioweapon lab instead of largely a response lab. Again, they literally just cut off any depth of conversation through just like ping-ponging between outlandish, what would seem like to them common sense assertions about something they know dick about, and a normal person pushing back on it not being, there being no way you can tell that whether it's true or not. And the conversation is in the middle, and the rest of us are just watching this fucking ping pong match happen.
Debunked that this virus was man-made or modified or anything like that. Doctor.
Right. Again, none of this is shored up by what the DOE said. Not insofar as we know from the FBI. This is the same clip over and over. And so I guess we have to look at this from the point of view is what is Sean Hannity's goal right here? And the only thing that seems to make any sense whatsoever is that Sean Hannity is trying to directly plant an idea virus in his viewer's head that this was a bioweapon attack, that the fact that the DOE finally came around to it, or the FBI agrees, or that the lab leak hypothesis might have gained some ground, or that people got, shut down for, by the way, not suggesting that it leaked from a lab, but that it was made in a lab to kill us all on purpose. But that's not important. What's important is you hear over and over and over and over and over again that the lie, which wasn't a lie, it was best information at the time, where they wouldn't say it was a man-made or bioweapon, is the same as him saying, as the DOE saying it probably leaked from that lab.
Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab.
There you go. See, again, not lab leak. Lab leak is it accidentally got out. It was naturally made, and these motherfuckers are trying this 12 monkey bullshit.
Lab in Wuhan, China. And yet this week, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum, despite his own intelligence community's findings that is simply not true.
If you look at the evolution of the virus in bats and what's out there now, it's very, very strongly leaning towards this could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated.
Right. Still has nothing to do with lab leak. None of what they're saying, none of his evidence is evidence of his point. This is aggravating.
Brett, I'm really sorry that the lab leak has become such a distraction for so many.
And by the way, it's not. The lab leak part of it, if they had talked about it in terms of an accidental zoological release, instead of they're making a weapon to murder us all, which drove the conversation in one direction, you could have discussed this pretty openly.
People, because frankly, we still don't know. There is no evidence really to say. Most of the scientific community, myself included, think that is a possibility, but far more likely this was a natural way in which a virus left a bat.
Oh, totally, completely debunked. A conspiracy theory, just like...
Again, listen to his language and his characterization of what you and I just watched. I guess, if you watch, like Decoding Fox's clips on Twitter, she goes through this all the time. But, like, the level of, like, gaslighting and propaganda-ish manipulation is kind of stunning in this case. And it, like, when it's Bongino and those folks, like, I really do chalk it up as just being dumb. Like, they've set, Bongholio, like, gets set on a talking point or a belief, and no new information is going to interrupt this. Sean, on the other hand, just seems to either be reading something he does not comprehend, but helps him, and therefore he'll sell it whether he believes it or not. And that's the debatable part, especially if you look at the text between Fox hosts about Dominion and the stories. Like, I'm going to go with, during this time, they're saying the exact same shit. They're like, it's not, like, the fact that it might have leaked from their natural, was a natural disease that leaked from there is not the same as them creating one, right? Yeah, okay. And you do realize that if they created one and it did get released, Trump was president and did nothing but, like, give Xi Jinping hickeys for the first half of the year while it was crawling across the earth. And, yeah, you know that? Okay.
Like Trump-Russia collusion really happened. No, they were wrong on that, too.
No, they weren't. And by the way, it was Trump organization and Trump campaign collusion. Trump himself is part of the collusion. He's a tool. That's where he always goes, they think I'm a Russian agent. Or, he's a chaos agent at best. And at best, he's just an asset to be manipulated. They didn't turn you into a fucking Manchurian candidate or a counter spy. He's not smart enough for that.
They were wrong on Hunter Biden's laptop.
I'm sorry. You still have this New York Post thing up. New York Post did an article about Hunter Biden's laptop. Would you like to put a picture on the screen of said laptop? May I see that, please? And just for the record, a hard drive called laptop will not suffice.
How many Americans believe their lies? How many were directly hurt or worse as a result of these lies?
Hurt or worse? What do you mean? All right. Let's go with the Fauci and everybody. We're talking about that. Let's follow his logic here. That they were downplaying the lab leak conspiracy, that the disease came from there. Because this is really interesting. While at the same time saying the disease is real, it's dangerous, we need to take measures to protect ourselves. We have limited knowledge of it, but we do know these are best practices. Some may turn out to not be fully helpful, but others may. So wash your hands, wear a mask, stay 6 feet away. If you feel sick, stay home, cough into your elbow, all that shit. And hopefully we'll mitigate some of the spread of this until we can get a handle on it. That's the truth they were telling, and people would react to it. Now, the only people that, in Sean's analogy, that would be harmed by the idea that, they downplayed that it was, a lab leak, or that, in his case, and they're mixing and matching that it was man-made, is Sean Hannity seems to be mad that if we'd have called it a bioweapon from China on day one, and this is on Trump, then maggots and like right-wingers and Republicans who didn't get vaccinated and died at a much higher clip of the disease than people, than Democrats and independents who gave a shit and paid attention, especially after the vaccines had come out and didn't get the vaccine, that Sean seems to be mad that if we'd have just said it was a bioweapon from the start, everybody would have gotten vaccinated. That would have been the thing that would have gotten the military trucks in Walmart parking lots like Donald Trump promised, and that rednecks would line up to get the shot. But because because they wouldn't admit to knowledge they did not have, or make up some sort of story about it being a man-made bioweapon, which they're like, it's obvious it is. By the way, which they're saying now, but all during it, they're like, it's a flu. It's nothing. They're going to wreck the economy. We don't have to stay home. It's no big deal. Now it's a fucking bioweapon. But back then it was like, it's the COVID hoax. And they agreed with Trump. And, that's why they wouldn't talk about their, the Fox News vaccine policy, getting the shot themselves while playing footsie with the idea that they weren't. Sean Hannity seems mad that Fauci and those guys didn't just outright say that it was a bioweapon created by the Chinese, and specifically via the Trump administration, specifically as a mouthpiece for the Trump team's strategy in dealing with it, because that would have been the thing that got the majority of the Fox viewers that died from COVID to get vaccinated, because to them it would have been war. That what they were wanting, that in the same way that Trump wanted another bite at the Comey apple that he got during his run against Hillary, he wanted Zelensky to come out and talk about an investigation in front of the world right before the election of 2020. He wanted another run at that. These assholes wanted another 9/11. We can say this is intact, and we'll use it as a predicate for war, and that seems to be what it is. Because if you look at how they reacted to it, they were shrugging it off like fucking crazy. But they knew it all the time.
Now, of course, they weren't even looking for the truth, and time again.
Oh, well, not during the Trump administration. As soon as Biden got in, he ordered a review of all the intelligence they had to try and come to a conclusion. And by the way, that was during that time that the FBI came up with their full conclusion, because they were told to sit down and review all the evidence. The DOE, this report that he's citing, also stemmed from that Biden executive order.
Again, all in an effort to get Donald Trump, the mob and the media, they denied reality. They denied the truth.
What the fuck? They did? The fuck was he saying?
In this case, they echoed nothing but Chinese propaganda, all while then President Trump was telling the truth. Take a look.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country.
All right, yeah. Excellent like Sean, you just get, nobody shits the bed better. Great example. Great example of the exact same gaslighting we saw earlier. Talk about the lab leak theory, and then show a clip about man-made manipulation of the virus in a lab, and then let that correlated thought happen together, but ultimately fuck your argument to anybody who's thinking and watching like we are what you're saying. Now, it doesn't say much for his respect for his viewers, but there you go. And in this particular case, she's saying, why do you keep calling it the China virus? Because it's affecting Chinese people. In many ways, by the way, there were people calling it the CCP flu instead of the China flu. And Trump made that decision to call it the China flu because being racist about it, or, specifically talking about Chinese people in general, he could get away with that with his crowd. But he couldn't shit on the CCP and Xi Jinping in particular, or call it the Wu flu because of the area it was from, specifically because it pissed off Xi Jinping and fuck up his trade deal.
Your own.
And he's going to go, because it came from China.
Secretary Azar says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus.
There you go. Ethnicity. That's what she's talking about. And that's, again, in the conversation about a country that is racially homogenous and a nation state at the same time. Chinese means a lot in the world. And it cannot be interchangeable with the people and the PLA.
Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's
China.
racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. As you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president.
Well, what do you mean? They said it. They still say it. They said it all during his presidency. What do you mean not going to happen? And also, that's your response. What I'm going to do in response to them saying it came from American soldiers and from American white-tailed deer and any number of, and from American athletes at one point, like they make up a bunch of bullshit about that. That's the Chinese government, by the way. That's not China saying that. That's not the Chinese saying that. And that's the problem with this distinction. And it's something that Americans tend to be a bit slapdash with, because for all the talk about, racial homogeny or white culture in the United States or any of that stuff, we all operate on a baseline that American is not an ethnicity. Never has been. It's a national identity. And that's why, patriotism, to me anyways, makes more sense as an American, because it's not, it may be a land birthright because your parents came here and decided to have their kids here because they believed in the country, but it wasn't because, we all look alike. We're all from here, and we're not leaving. And this is our land because our tribesmen sat on it for a long time, any more than, ultra white nationalists in Germany or something would have that kind of since the Germanic tribes drove the Romani out of fucking Poland or whatever.
Now, Trump was right. The virus did come from China. In fact, it was apparently developed by China at a lab partially funded by you.
Well, yeah, Obama had cut that funding, and I feel guilty. I think you feel guilty too. And again, Trump turned that funding back on.
American people, under Anthony Fauci's leadership at the NIH, millions.
Under Donald Trump's leadership at the NIH. Obama's leadership put a stop to it.
Of U.S. tax dollars were funneled via a third party, the EcoHealth Alliance, to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That was a lab well known for a couple of things. I just stated, for example, one, that their controversial gain-of-function research. Two, their sloppy safety protocols, if you even want to call them that.
Well, I certainly don't during the Trump administration when he cut the funding to those safety protocols.
And, they were known for also studying coronaviruses. So mark my words, there's got to be accountability or this will happen again. Are you really ever going to trust your government on any issue involving your health or your family?
asshole, you're citing the government of Joe Biden, who said we need a full reckoning on what this is, and you are citing the reports that came out as a result of the president of the United States looking back on what happened under Donald Trump and going, we need a full review of what the fuck happened. Yes, I absolutely trust the presidency of Joe Biden in this particular case far more than I ever would have or could have trusted Donald Trump, especially in retrospect, knowing how full of shit he was.
Please health. Hey, Sean Hannity.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Y'all forgot to clack. Son of a bitch. Meanwhile, back at the outhouse, things are piling up. That took up a lot of our time. Hold on one second. I'm just going to make sure. Open up, you crazy thing. There we go. Back to here. This guy right here. Okay, grab this. I'm copying that. Copy. Excellent. Cool. Yeah, so, and by the way, just for the record, I was just saving that video clip. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Can't Stop Lying, for finding that for me real quick. Everybody who scrambled to do that, I really appreciate it. Because it took me right back to the bookend on this. And let's revisit this one more time at the tail end of Sean Hannity's little video, where he wants you to think that you shouldn't trust your, quote, government now, but you should have trusted it under Trump.
The Obama administration did hit pause on gain-of-function research, though, and that was lifted under your watch. Why did you allow the gain-of-function research to continue?
Well, I think probably people that worked for me looked at it, and at one point they might have done that, but ultimately what...
Pass the buck. Huge decision, outsourced while he was golfing.
What we did was we shut it off. We shut the whole thing off, and we stopped making payments that were approved much earlier than our administration.
Yes, for security, while allowing gain-of-function research to continue. And if there's ever a time when Donald Trump has earned a womp face, it's that moment. I'm going to clip this. You guys can pass it around. It's HAL Sparks. Mega worldwide. Now, before we move on, fuck this, like, I feel like that should be the thumbnail for this one. Just like, so, a couple things. Oh God, this is gonna be so fucking intolerably long. I'm already out of time because that took so long. But let's follow it up since we're on a theme. And then I'll get Marge tomorrow. We'll get the National Divorce tomorrow because I haven't watched it and I want to watch it with you guys. But meanwhile, it's Salcedo. And this is a representative, I forget what his name is, a congressman who wants you to know the Biden administration is compromised by China. That's why Chris Wray, appointed by Donald Trump, waited until Joe Biden was president to do a comprehensive review of the Wu flu, of COVID-19, and came out with his findings and was allowed to speak freely about it once he had. Hey, remember that story a couple weeks ago where Christopher Wray was going to have an interview with Fox News where he talks openly about their belief about COVID? Remember that? Me neither, because it didn't happen. All right, hold on. Now I'm going to get mad. Hold on. Boink. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Wray.
The Mentos gum bottle is...
Oh, God, I thought that was Mentos soda for a fucking second. What a horrifying notion. Oh, by the way, the gum I tried for singing, it worked like a charm. Although at one point I was hitting a high note and almost spit it out. Hilarious.
Here in the Strategic Information Operations Center at the Fed.
Also, by the way, there's a reason why Brett Baer is interviewing him and not anybody else, because Brett Baer is the current no bullshit guy at Fox. He's the one who called bullshit on the Dominion stuff early, and so he's going to get the actual interviews now because of the all the texts that came out about the Dominion suit. Yeah, he's the only one that doesn't look like a sponge-headed fuck.
FBI headquarters. We appreciate you talking to us.
Absolutely. Happy to talk with you, Brett.
You know, polls show that the FBI's reputation is at a real record low. What do you make of that?
Well, look, there are also...
Well, Brett, I'm going to go with your fucking network to start.
Sorts of opinions out there about the FBI, just like there are about every major institution these days. I can tell you that we're focused on the opinions of the people we actually do the work for and the people we do the work with. And I look at things like, for example, our recruiting. The thousands and thousands of Americans all across this country who are signing up in droves to come work for the FBI. And I should tell you, Brett, on that front, a lot of people don't know this, that number has gone up dramatically over the last few years since I've been in this seat.
That's really interesting.
And that's...
Yeah, gee, it's almost as if people didn't trust it under Donald Trump and were waiting so that they wouldn't be sent on some sort of weird mission by him.
At a time when recruiting for law enforcement, as you may know, in general, in law enforcement has struggled quite a bit. So you're talking...
Especially because of your network, Brett. That's interesting.
About young men and women in their late 20s, early 30s, a lot of them with military and law.
We're doing a lot better than the Capitol Police recruitment. Let me tell you, those, yeah, they're having a hard time. Brett, filling their vacancies. Why would that be? Brett?
Do you
hold on. Why the fuck did it jump over there? Why is it leaping about? Sorry, you know what? I'm gonna have to grab this off of YouTube because it's on their network. It's just gonna be terrible. It might take me a day. Hold on. I know it. Oh, I got a good idea. I hang out. So, nope, I don't want that. I want this. Because we can look at since we're not talking about a specific whoops. Ray. There you go. Here you go. Because some of these have already been pulled. It pulled it in pieces, so I can at least grab it off there, and the audio might be a little bit louder on this part of it. So let's go back to here. Yeah, here you go. This is the part about the Wuhan lab leak theory.
What is the determination by the FBI?
So, as you note, Brett, the FBI has for quite some time now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. Let me step back for a second. You know, the FBI has folks, agents, professionals, analysts, virologists, microbiologists, et cetera, who focus specifically on the dangers of biological threats, which include things like novel viruses like COVID, and the concerns that in the wrong hands, some bad guys, a hostile nation state, a terrorist, a criminal, the threats that those could pose. So here you're talking about a potential leak from a Chinese government-controlled lab that killed millions of Americans, and that's precisely what that capability was designed for. I should add that our work related to this continues, and there are not a whole lot of details I can share that aren't classified. I will just make the observation that the Chinese government, seems to me, has been doing its best to try to thwart and obfuscate the work here, the work that we're doing, the work that our U.S. government and close foreign partners are doing, and that's unfortunate for everybody.
There you go. So In this one, he goes one step further in this conversation in the line where he says it killed millions of Americans, and that's precisely that capability was designed for. That in and of itself is telling. Now, it could be that that's just, he's still in his hypothetical with bad actors discovering a biological entity that they could release and blah, blah, blah. He could still be speaking off the cuff. But since he's the head of the FBI, I'm guessing no. And the fact that, insofar as I know, there has not been a stomp from the Biden administration about this. Agreed? Has anybody seen the Biden administration going, we find the words of the FBI director to be completely unreasonable and he should watch himself before he talks about this kind of thing? Yeah, that's the only.
What is
that's
the
main.
determination?
Yeah, hold on. This is the likely came from a lab leak. There you go. This is making it across the entire. Yeah, there you go. Cole also Chris Ray's interview. Even as notorious Fox hosts are pushing the idea that two standards on classified docs. Well, that's reasonable too. What the fuck? Hold on. What the fuck is Chris Ray doing on TV? Much less Fox. Dr. Ellen Ripley. Okay. Again, can I just say that? What does it say? Trump is the enemy of the people. Or is well regulated. The GOP is a political party. Blah, blah, blah. 1,800 followers, whatever. I don't know if this is a real account, but if I was going to stay away from an account that's supposed to look like they're on my side, but actually isn't, I would stay away from that one. Remove Ray, says Patty. Somebody. Fucking trash straight to the fucking garbage. Classified. Oh, because they're going on the classified document stuff from before about the double standard there. Okay. Assess the okay. That's the clip that's floating. Because the funny thing is like you would think that the right was waiting with bated breath for the stuff about Biden's classified documents versus Trump's classified documents, and that was part of the conversation in there where he's kind of like half-assing both. And it's not up to him either. Like he's investigatory. The DOJ will make their decision on the seriousness of them, and quite frankly, the level of classification that they're allowed to see in compartmentalized stuff. Because even the FBI people, unless they get specific clearance, can't just get an FBI agent can't walk into a skiff and just crack open any file they want. They have to get clearance up the chain. Not everybody. You don't take your oath as an FBI agent and suddenly get top secret clearance. So that's another conversation for another time. And again, he's just pushing that up. But the funny thing is that clip, that piece, should be the thing that right-wingers are most excited about, is him talking about him half-assing this shit. But what are they sticking on? They're talking about the FBI's assessment as an entity, not Chris Ray's personal assessment. The FBI is an entity that more than likely the disease came from a lab in China. Which, by the way, what? Hold on. Is there a cat out there? Hold on. What in the world? Yes. Oh, hi, Murph. What's going on, buddy? You okay? What happened? She what? She had to go to work. You think so? Come here. They want to see you. I can't just talk to you off camera. It's bad TV. Well, I know you're a nervous Nelly, but that's not my fault. Can I walk over and pet you and then get close enough where I can snatch you up and annoy you a little bit? Is that no? You sure? What is it? What are you doing? Where are you going? If you're hungry, all right, he just ran away. Conversations with Murphy. Could you guys hear him? Like he's so loud. Bring the chat up real quick. He's just yeah. He just Sorry, he's freaking out your cat. I'm sorry. He's a talker. He's a Russian blue. We don't trust him. I believe he's spy. I believe he is trying to kill me. I think we have blamed Chip for many problems on the show, but I believe at this point that it is Murphy who's sneaking in here looking for moose and squirrel. Blue cats, yeah. What's Murphy look like? Well, if I could, he runs if you try to pick him up, and then he's up in your grill if you're just trying to sit and eat something. Good Lord. I'll see what I can do. Wish me luck. Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves. And by the way, I'm gonna leave this screen up because if I have to push the button a second time, like I do my be right back screen. Oh wait, I have an idea. Hold on. This is so stupid, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I don't care. All right. Where is it? Hold on. Excuse me. No, yeah, while you're down there, I get it. Hang on a second. I'm going to open this. I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. Pedal. Then we go to here. We go to stream. And we do the thing. We put a button here. And then we go to this. We put it on me. And then, okay. Wish me luck. Hold on. I'm gonna try this. I'll be right back. Hopefully with a cat. Okay, we're gonna test and see if this works. Hold on. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's Chip. I couldn't get Murphy. He kept running. I was chasing him for a second. Murphy's, yeah, but Chip was taking a nap. He was easy to catch. He's fat and slow. Hi, buddy. How's my boy? How's my boy? He was so mad that I wasn't here to feed him this morning. He was really aggravated. And when I got home, Maddie, I rolled up hot to do the show, and Maddie was sitting in the window at the front of the door because she gets fed in the morning with Chip and Chud too. So she was like, "What the hell? I'm hungry. Where have you been?" So, what's going on, buddy? How's my boy? How's my boy? This is Chip, everybody. Everybody loves you. Love you guys. We'll see you next time, and it's going to be lovely. And I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to take off. And we have so much shit to dive into. I'm never going to get it. There's just not enough time. I got to start making short videos. I got to do it. I got to start prepping some, don't I? Yep. Anyways, I've got to go put him down before my arm goes to sleep. Maddie's even harder to catch. I'll do Maddie tomorrow. I'll have to prep it. I'll have to literally get her in here. Who gave you permission to leave? Thanks very much. Okay. Oh, you wanna hop down, buddy? Oh gosh. You want a snack? Yeah? Oh, that made it good. That's the noise. I taught him to respond to the noise from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like that. And he knows he knows it's snack time. So anyways, yes, he has black toe beans. It's cute. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. You're wonderful. And just call today a lesson in gaslighting, because that's what it was. Holy shit. Okay, bye. I'm gonna get some sleep.